what's up? It's me, Gazbot, for 100 Days Making Comics, day 95. And as you can see on the top of a beautiful mountain here, or am I? No, it's just a trail. Well, I must be... Oh, there's barbed wire warehouse stuff behind me. Perspective is everything! That's the lesson, is that... I don't know. There's some comic lesson here that I can't verbalize very well, but content is king, or context. Context is king. And yeah, literally drawing, if I just drew this, you would think I was in a forest or on top of a mountain or something. I don't know, just a fun little jam. I'm out riding my bike. I haven't done my work yet today, but I feel like I've been very stagnant with taking the videos in the office, and my lighting has not been great either. So I'm going to go home later and work on the horror and probably do another video in the studio, but this is just to give you something else to look at. What I've done so far on my work day, a good chunk of my day was catching up on housework. Just laundry, boring stuff like that I've been neglecting to catch up on other work. Still don't have the Earthling page I need to color, but I'm not too worried about that, because even if I get it by Monday, I mean, even if I get it later, then I'll be fine. What I did work on was my Kid Switch page. I did the layouts for that. That was pretty much all the art stuff I did today. I talked about the eBay auctions that are up. Another thing I forgot to mention is there is a Monkey Mod t-shirt, which was available once before, and now it's available again, limited. I think it's like the first 20 people to get. There's something special about it. Well, what's special is that it's lovely and has awesome art by Kevin Cross, but also that he is splitting the profits with Peter Palmiotti's fundraiser. So it's another way you can help both of them and get yourself a cool t-shirt. And I'll put the link below. And actually, here's what the t-shirt looks like. So there's that. I actually just moved a little bit further down. Hey, am I on the street now? Nope. Just further down the trail, and now I'm back in the woods. But anyway, I moved a little bit further down the trail because I'd heard... Wow, I'm really blown out here. Sorry to keep spinning the camera. Hi. I heard some voices which I thought were people on the street or on another part of the trail, and they were getting louder, and I realized that down in like the woodsy area here, there were people. And at first I thought, oh, maybe some kids, drinking or something. But there were bikes and a bunch of other stuff, and I heard them moving around, like getting closer. So I wanted to get out of there because I think it was like a little homeless enclave. And not necessarily that they're dangerous, but I don't feel the need to be filming on my iPhone next to people who might be living in the forest next to the warehouses. So I'm going to head home now. Time has passed. Moments have elapsed. I am now back at the studio. It is late now. It is about 2 in the morning. I finished my bike ride with uneventful rest of it. Sure. And I got home and did some more work. I had done the roughs for Kid Switch. I also then did the roughs for a commission I have to do Larfleas. So I sent that over for approval, and the guy said, good goes. And so I will good goes with the Larfleas, who is the Orange Lantern, in case you don't know. Or Agent Orange, if you want to be technical. So then I did work on the horror, but before I worked on the horror, I had mentioned before I was using a PowerSoft free streaming, screen capture stuff that had been working great for me. It seems like it's just not going to work anymore. I reinstalled it a few times, went on the website. The website still says it's free, unlimited, whatever, and then if you buy the pro version, you get this other stuff. But I think what they're doing now is there's sort of an online version where you have to be connected to the internet to do it, and then there's the download, just run it from your desktop, which is what I've been doing. And I think they kind of covertly got rid of the download version, and the unlimited free they're talking about is just the online version. Anyway, I didn't appreciate that. I'm going to try to not bite the bullet and pay for the full amount, which is not crazy expensive. It's about $40, $50, but it's more than I want to spend, and I don't like the way they did it. It wasn't like, if I knew ahead of time, oh, you get a month and you have to pay or something like that, but it made it seem like it's fine. And then they're like, oh, everybody likes it now let's switch it up. Anyway, I was looking into other options, and one was, I'm going to get it wrong. It's open source recording? Eric Fares had recommended it because he uses it for streaming, but you could also record. And I messed around with it a little bit, and it's free, so that's good. And I seemed to get it working, and I liked that you could do picture-in-picture, so I could have, my desktop and then my stupid face and then, whatever else, which I didn't have with the other program. So I was kind of getting on board with it, except then when I recorded, I couldn't play back the videos I made because they were FLV or whatever, some kind of Flash format. and I tried to bring it in my editing software, couldn't read it there either. So I was like, well, that's a load of garbage. And I looked online, and it was like, oh, well, you need to download this codec, and then it's like, oh, but still, you probably want to do it in MP4, but I couldn't figure out how to record in MP4. And then it was like, oh, well, then just take it and run it through this program after. I'm like, you know what, done. That's way too much work. My old program was like, record, video, done. Any more steps than that are unacceptable. So maybe I'm an idiot and I'm doing it wrong, but assuming I'm not doing it wrong, it's not something I'm going to be using. Especially since I have no real interest in streaming, at least at this point, which seems to be what it's mainly for. But I have seen other people use it, like Eric, to great effect. So, you know, I'm not saying it's a bad product, I'm just saying it's a bad product for me at this moment. And a week from now, 2 weeks from now, I'd be like, I was wrong, I'm gonna use it. Please forgive me, internet tubes. But forgetting about that, I spent way too long on that, and I think that impacted my work on the horror, both time-wise, but also psychologically, because I did that first, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta work on the horror, and I was just like, didn't even feel like working on it anymore, and I'm still working on the same panel. I put about an hour and a half in, and just like the last couple days, it's like a really unproductive hour and a half. I went into the panel, and I was like, oh, let me rough out the tank mech, which is like, in the beginning it's sort of used for mining, and then later they turn that like mining laser as an offensive weapon, but it's the same piece of machinery in the background, and I had previously designed it, and actually I'll throw up the design I had done previously. I say design, but it was more like just a sketch turned pinup, but I'll put that up right here. So that's kind of what I had in my mind when I'm doing the thumbnails and stuff. It's going to look like that. But the more I tried to figure out how to turn the angle, like, it didn't quite make sense, like, and it doesn't need to make perfect scientific sense, but I'm like, how would it even move? And it, like, any angle other than that one shot I did just seemed like it wasn't working. So I'm like, I gotta kind of redesign this, I guess. So then I spent quite a bit of time trying to redesign it. Still, I'm not 100% happy with the final design. I'll show you, I have a sheet of designs I did that I'll put up there. So, you know, some of them are okay, but again, a lot of it is less about looking like an okay drawing and more like, I'm going to have to put this in different positions and different angles, and it has to make some sort of sense how it goes together. But I kind of got to a point where I'm like, that's kind of good enough for now. I should actually do some work on the page. So I just sort of inked the middle ground part of the like rock, and then I started to rough in the tank mech in the background, which isn't a lot, but I'll show you that here. A little cross. Crisscross. They'll make you. Daddy Mac will make you. Crisscross will make you. Toys fall over. I won't do that last jump then. What fell? Doesn't. Oh, I know what fell. Ranger keys. Well, these are mobirates, which are the Japanese version. Aren't you interested? Look. Is it green and black, or is it white and gold? I'm, of course, referring to that dress meme that's been going around, and if you haven't seen it, don't bother. It's not as interesting as you would think. Which didn't stop me from paying attention to it for 10 minutes yesterday. So that was my horror stuff. The other thing today, I saw a video, actually I think I might have saw it yesterday, but I didn't, it was after the video I put up. It was just a short little clip of Ira Glass, who is the host of This American Life, the podcast, and they had a TV show briefly too. Sorry, I'm stepping on things that are sticking into my feet. Pieces of plastic? Who knows? One time I found a cat claw. I mean, I have cats, but like a whole claw almost, just like, oh, they're just gonna leave that there. Wouldn't that be like if I pulled out my entire toenail and just, you know, but anyway. Ira Glass, and I listened to This American Life. I don't remember hearing this quote before, so maybe it was an interview he did with someone else. But he was talking about the rift or the gulf. I forget the exact terminology is. I'll put a link. Somebody put it up on YouTube and did one of those like, oh look, the words are moving to what he's saying, which I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, the first time I saw it was mildly amusing, but it's way overused. Regardless, the point of this video, it's only like 2 minutes. I'll put a link below. It just because he'll articulate better, but it certainly resonated with me, and what he was saying was the creative gulf, or however he termed it, in that a lot of, himself included, and a lot of other creative types in all different fields, have this period of time where they get frustrated, sometimes quit, whatever, and I certainly can identify with this, where, and I may have even mentioned this before, when am I going to say it? I've preambled like 10 times. Now I'm going to say it. My taste, or the subject's taste in this case, exceeds my ability, or one's ability, but I'm applying this to myself. Meaning that most people that get involved in a creative endeavor, we'll call, their art, whatever that is, and for me it's drawing or drawing comics, have taste. Theoretically, it's good taste, and I think that's what he says, good taste, but I'm going to even say it doesn't have to be quote-unquote good taste, but you know what you like. You know what you aspire to, you know what you think is good, you know what is correct on some level, what's objectively correct and what's correct for your heart and mind and what you think looks good. But the ability isn't there. And you can kind of see better than you can create. And I definitely understand that, and I live with that still now. And I think a lot of artists do. But I think it wasn't so much that he was articulating this, because I've sort of said versions of this in the past, of like, when and by the way, I'm kind of squatting because of the stupid tripod again, if that's why I keep switching my legs, because I'm getting like cramps. But I said various versions of this where it's like, I'll show somebody a picture, and even if they're like, this is great, I love it, I'm like, yeah, and I've kind of trained myself to just say, thank you. And that took a really long time to just say, thank you. And this is a tip to everyone else. Somebody gives you a compliment, just say thank you. In your head, be like, no, that sucks, I wasn't happy with it, it's not done, I could do better, the perspective's crazy. You may or may not be right about that, shut up. Just say thank you. Unless it's an art teacher or a fellow artist, or you're looking for an actual critique or whatever. But like if it's a fan or your mom or something, thank you. Especially if you're selling your artwork, especially if you're at a convention table or any place where you're trying to present yourself as, for lack of a better term, I know it's crass, but a commodity, because, you're like, hey, I'm great, invest in me. Whether it's like be a patron of my art or buy my merchandise and services, you want to project some level of competency and confidence in your own work, because if you're like, no, my work isn't good, then why would anybody want it? This is all nothing new. But anyway, despite this retraining of myself to just simply say thank you and appreciate that people like what I've done, even if I don't, the gulf between what you can do and sort of what you can see, what is like bad or wrong. He talked about, this usually lasts for a few years and you got to kind of power through it, and if you don't quit, eventually you get to the point where you're creating work that lives up to your own taste or your own expectation or whatever. And I can see the truth in that. But I mean, I've been doing art for years, and I've been doing professional art for years, and I still have not reached that point, for me personally. And this isn't oh, woe is me, please everybody tell me how good my art is. I don't want to see that in the comments. I don't want to see everybody going, you're great. Thank you. Okay? But that's not the point of this. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks in this sort of mindset. I mean, it does, and I appreciate if people like my art. I especially appreciate it that they give me money for it. And in certain aspects of my art, like when I do caricatures and stuff, I'm totally confident in that. I'm like, this is better than most of the other people I see doing this. You're definitely getting your money's worth. I've done a good job, that kind of thing. It applies a lot more to my personal stuff. It applies a lot more to my comic book pages, things like that. Things that I don't do as much on a regular basis, things that I haven't been paid repeatedly over years that I feel like, well, clearly I'm doing something right, and things that I'm more invested in personally. So, if I do a caricature and it comes out a little bit wonky, like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, you think it's good? Great. It probably is, but like if there's something wrong on my comic page, if it's for someone else, I'm still like, ooh, I gotta get that right. If it's for myself, I'm like, oh, let me redraw it 15 times, which is not the best way to be, I acknowledge, but it's just the truth. And I was trying to think, like, certainly I'm better than I used to be. And I could look at work I did a year or two ago and it's better. I look at work I did 10 years ago and I'm better. And like, so I certainly see a progression. And I think others do as well that know me and have seen my work. But I think two things that have slowed my ability to get to this, oh, I'm creating art that meets my own taste standards. I'm going to switch my leg stance. Defensive stance. No, I was in defensive stance. Now I'm in offensive stance because I'm attacking this problem head on rather than denying it. Anyway, but I think the two things that have kept me sort of from reaching that point, one is that while I have been doing art in some form for, I don't know, 20 years, roughly, not necessarily professionally, but 22 years since I was like, hey, I want to be an artist. Around 16 is when I was like, I'm going to be an artist. In that time period, there were like whole years I didn't draw. And even in the years when I was drawing, some years I was like, well, I have a job doing characters, The Great Adventure, and that was the only drawing I did for like 2 years. It was just characters and nothing else. And then there were other times when I was working as an animator in Flash, but I wasn't really drawing, and so I was working in art, but I didn't draw for like a year or two. And maybe I'd doodle once in a while at home, but I wasn't really honing that craft, And that's where I feel most vulnerable, like my literal rendering skills, my literal drawing skills, the most basic stuff, which I don't, again, I'm not saying I'm without skill and what I draw is crap, but it's not where I want it to be. It's not what I see in my mind. It's not what I want it to be. And I understand almost all artists, what they draw isn't what was in their mind precisely, but it's closing that gap to a more manageable amount, you know, where it's closer to what I want. And so part of it is that I think that my taste or my, you know, whatever you want to call it, my understanding of art has far exceeded my ability, not just because I have not been consistent in my upkeep of my skills, and you know, I have been the last few years, but leading up to that, like I said, there were times when I didn't do any art at all when I wasn't professional yet, and then there were times when I was a professional, but I wasn't literally drawing for a long time, and I wasn't doing it in my free time either. That's part of it, but the other part of it is that during that whole time, I kept reading comics, I kept watching animated movies, I've read a ton of books about how to draw, a ton of books about, you know, like my favorite artists and like their sketch process, and I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube and whatever, so I've increased my knowledge of art and creating the type of art I'd like to create, which almost is a hindrance in a way to me being able to enjoy and create, because I think at some point in the distant past, I would draw stuff and be like, this is great, I'm gonna go work for Image Comics when I'm 17. And it's like, why would I have thought that? Because it was, hey, you know, ignorance is bliss. I really thought what I was drawing was as good as what, you know, Todd McFarlane or one of those guys was drawing, and there was no reason I wouldn't get hired once I was out of high school. Now that's like kind of the opposite end, where it's like, need a little bit of reality check. But I think there's probably a perfect middle ground, which I'm not at, where I could draw something and be like, oh, you know what, the feet are a little bit weird, let me fix that. Oh, I'm having trouble, let me just look up, you know, a couple pictures of feet. Oh, I got it, and fix it. So I'm aware of the flaws and I'm able to correct them. But now I'm at the point where when I draw something, and this is, again, this isn't me being down on myself, I don't want this to be a pity party, but I see so many flaws. And objective flaws. There's always going to be style choices and composition and that kind of stuff where it's a little bit subjective, but just like that perspective is wrong, that anatomy is wrong, that proportion is wrong, the placement of the foreground and the background don't make sense together with the perspective I've set up, things like that, which I see, you know, I'll do a panel and see like 5 objective problems. Now I'm not even talking about the 20 subjective problems, but 5 objective problems. And so then I'll go in and maybe I'll be able to fix one pretty quickly. And then I'll sort of try to fix 2 others and redraw them 15 times and somehow through luck get them fixed. And then those last 2, I can never quite get right. Or I start doing research, and this is why it'll be like, oh, it's been 3 hours on one panel, because I'm trying to fix every error I perceive. And that's where the problem comes in, that I can't get it. I can't fix all the errors. I mean, like, I physically and mentally just am unable at this point in my career to be able to fix all the errors. And I realize that people are like, you're never going to be able to fix all the errors. But, I mean, at least, you know, these obvious ones that I'm seeing to my satisfaction where I'm willing to move on. Partially because of all the time involved, and partially it's just like certain things like you can't learn, and it's not like I could just quick read an article and be like, now I know how to do it. It's a thing where I have to do it 1,500 times before it really sinks in. So that slows me down, especially, and again, the more I care about the work, which is the messed up thing, is the stuff that I don't care about as much, I blow through it, it comes out looking okay, they're happy, I'm happy, whatever, but then the stuff that's important to me, like the more important it is, the slower I get and the more I hate it. And so that's the case, you know, like with these horror pages, perspective slows me up a lot, and just drawing machinery and things like that, and it's like, you know, I need to get my skills to catch up to my taste, as it were. And I spent way more time and effort increasing my knowledge and taste than I have increasing my skill. And I don't know any other way around that other than to draw more, maybe read less. But it is a thing where you would think this point in my career I would be past that. But I feel like if I I feel like I've been in a really good zone the last year or 2-ish, and I feel like if I keep going this way in another year or 2, I'll be feeling pretty happy with myself. I think I'll still hate my art, and I still think I'll have to force myself to say thank you to people, but I think I'll be going a little faster and not be so miserable, because there's, not miserable, that's an overstatement, but you know, there's that saying, you know, first you get fast, then you get good and fast. I feel like at one time I was fast. Then I started getting kind of good and slowed down. And I went through a cycle. I forgive me if I'm repeating myself, maybe I said this before, but I would get fast, and then I'd start getting good, which would slow me down, and then eventually I'd get almost up to fast again, and then I'd start learning something new and go down, and it was sort of an up and down cycle. But lately I feel like I'm down here, like this is fast, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting better, I'm getting better, I'm getting slower, I'm getting better, oh, I'm getting slow. It's like, I see myself getting better, certainly not getting faster, just getting slower or staying the same. And that's not really great for professional clients. Although with professional clients, when there's deadline, I am able to make it happen. Because it's like, well, there's a deadline and I'm a professional, so it has to be done. But even for myself, I don't want to be taking, you know, to take a page like from roughs to finished color takes me like 20-something hours, which is a long time, you know, and even if I'm not doing color, like, you know, it takes me more than a day to do a page, which is way above the average artist, and you know, the level of quality that I'm putting out, I feel like doesn't warrant that. You know what I mean? If I was putting these pages out in like 4 or 5 hours, I'd be like, wow, I'm doing really good. But for the time I'm putting in, I feel like this should be a lot better. So, you know, I'm struggling with that, you know, how many times do I redraw it before I move on and, you know, whatever. And there's a lot of things, too, that, like, when I'm not afraid of hard work. I'll put hours and hours into stuff, but it gets frustrating when I redraw something 10 times and it still looks wrong. And, you know, there's sometimes I just don't know how to approach a problem or how to fix it. And, you know, even though I looked at the anatomy book, or even though I looked at a quick tutorial on 3-point perspective to refresh my memory, it's just still, like, looking wrong. And it's, you know, how much schooling can I do on myself in between now and the end of the week when this thing has to be done, you know? This is a big, long ramble. But anyway, yeah, the gulf between taste and ability has been on my mind, and the little Ira Glass thing sort of summed it up, although he's a lot more positive about it than I am. And if you're starting out in your career, or you're back further than I am, this will not be as much of a problem for you. I mean, supposedly it's a problem for everybody, but, you know, if you're like, oh, I'm kind of just getting going, well, hey, in 3 or 4 years, you'll probably be past it. I'm just in the stupid position that I've kind of put myself in by being lazy and inconsistent throughout my life, while at the same time consuming lots of media about the thing I love without doing it, that I am now I only have those few years ahead of me, just like you guys did. I'm gonna stop. I hope this didn't seem too negative. A lot of it's in my own head, obviously. I'm a generally happy person, except when I think about things I care about, and then I realize that it's all meaningless anyway, because, you know, I'll probably be dead in 50, 60 years at the most, and everyone I know and care about will be dead in another 100 or 2 years, and at some point the human race will be extinct. And even if I create a magnum opus like Mouse, the best I could hope for is somebody will remember it for 50 or 100 years, and, you know, within a few hundred years, it'll be forgotten. The comics medium will be forgotten. You know, our country probably won't exist anymore, and eventually the human race and the earth won't exist. So it's all completely meaningless. So anyway, today's day 95, and that means we've got 5 days remaining, or left.